Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this evening. Although I've already personally had the chance to attend the Westchester Playa Neighborhood Council meeting and go to CPAB, and while I've had a chance to check in with many of you just over the last 36 days or so, we are long overdue for a more broad community-wide check-in. This is actually something that we were planning to convene all the way back in the old days before the end of 2024. Obviously, the last several weeks have been absolutely devastating for our district and for the entire city. Uh, Probably everybody in this call tonight knows someone that has lost their home in the Palisades. Thousands of people have literally lost everything in the Palisades fire, which is now the largest disaster our city has ever faced. I really wanted to take a minute and thank all of you from Westchester and Playa and Ladera and any other communities who may be joining us tonight, who have opened your homes and your hearts to so many neighbors and friends and loved ones. So many of you came to volunteer at our CD11 offices. Thank you for that. You were there answering our phones, running our donations center. We literally could not have done that without your help. There were so many local businesses and organizations from Westchester that helped raise money, donate food and essential items. And I just really, from the bottom of my heart, want to say thank you to everyone from the community who stepped up to prove that at the end of the day, we're all one West Side. And it really warmed my heart and makes me extremely proud to be the council member for this incredible district. I also wanted to take a minute and thank everyone for their patience and understanding over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, the crisis in the Palisades diverted a lot of our time and resources. Every single one of our CD11 team members had to rise to the occasion and try to help lead our district through the darkest days that we've ever had. But as I've shared in my newsletter over the last couple of weeks, we are resuming our usual district operations, including our encampment interventions and our care and Care Plus cleanups. We have certainly felt the impact of having to defer that routine work that we do, and we are now actively trying to make up for some lost time. I had a few items on my agenda that I wanted to go over this evening, and then we're going to go ahead and open it up to questions. I know some were submitted by email in advance of our meeting tonight, but we're also going to open it up to the floor to try to get through as many questions as we can. First of all, I want to talk about homelessness. Obviously, this has been my top priority since I took office, and we have made a lot of progress. That said, we still have a long way to go. We still have a lot of roadblocks that I am trying to break through with the city and the county and LAHSA. But over the last 2 years, we have tried new things and we have added new tools. As you all know, we went from having years of literally no 4118 zones on the west side to now having over 50 of them. For those of you who may not be familiar with 4118, that is our Safe Schools and Parks Ordinance that gives us the ability to prevent tent encampments around certain sensitive uses like schools, parks, daycares, and libraries. We can also get those protections in place where we can make findings about public safety issues. So we have put many of those in place, and there are numerous of them in Westchester. I think there are some misconceptions sometimes about what 4118 is and what it does. 4118 is a piece of paper. It is an electronic document. It's not a wall around a particular park or another location. But what it is a tool that enables our service providers like the Circle Team or another nonprofit or LAPD if necessary to tell folks that they can't camp that close to one of those designated sites. For our 4118 ordinance does not apply to RVs. That is a completely different set of rules and issues and problems that I'll talk about separately. We've expanded our Circle Team to handle calls related to homelessness. In large part, that is to help reduce the call load on LAPD, which helps improve their response times. We've also added West Coast Care as a new provider here in CD11. They focus on family reunifications, getting unhoused individuals back to family and loved ones and their support networks who are in a position to try to help people get on pathways to recovery and stability. This was a missing piece of our toolkit, and we've been very excited to expand that and see the results so far. We also added an entire new Care Plus team that gives us more flexibility and more operations every month and allows us to be in more places doing more of the work that we need. We also just retained a new specialist to help us work on RV encampment interventions. That has been a tricky process, even finding a service provider who was willing to do the work. But we are very excited. We are starting to roll out a proof of concept. And as those resources become available to us, we'll be focusing them on some of our priority spots in Westchester. And I'll get to those in a minute. I wanted to let you know also that my team and I continue to have regular meetings with LAHSA and our service providers to talk about our work in the community, where we have encampments that need to have services and intervention efforts. And we work very, very diligently to ensure that the efforts of my office are working hand in hand with our operations on the ground. The hard reality here, though, guys, is that the vast majority of folks who are remaining on the streets in Westchester and Playa and other parts of the West Side are people who suffer from major mental health and addiction issues, many of whom are simply not well enough to accept help when we offer. Some of them just don't want the help, and some of them just don't want to move. And as frustrating as that is for all of us, I simply do not currently have the legal tools to deal with any of those issues. Our care courts have been undersubscribed in part due to their voluntary nature and in part because the eligibility criteria are too narrow. The county has refused to implement SB 43, which would have expanded the definition of gravely disabled to open more pathways to care for people who need it. And they simply haven't yet stepped up with the addiction and mental health recovery beds that we need, but we are continuing to work with them to establish pilot programs and recovery beds, because I think we all know and agree fundamentally that the mental health and the addiction components of this problem have to be centered in our intervention efforts. The good news, though, is that we passed Prop 36, which will at least open mandated pathways to care for those folks that have mental health or addiction issues who end up in the criminal justice system. I know that there are sometimes narratives that get pushed in text and WhatsApp groups and Nextdoor, and people and RVs are being pushed into Westchester. And I just want to be clear about this. We do not do that. We do not encourage that. And if any evidence exists of our service providers participating in that kind of behavior, they would cease to have a working relationship with me and my office, because I'm not going to put up with that. Every community in CD11 has its own problems to deal with, and making those problems someone else's is not what we're about. I also want to talk about the recent lawsuit dashboard from the count a year ago that appears to show a pretty large increase in unhoused folks in Westchester. I know that those numbers do not comport with reality on the ground at that time, and they don't comport with reality on the ground currently. I certainly don't like seeing data that looks like that, but let's be honest. LAHSA is data challenged on a good day. But what they've explained to me about it is that about a third of that comes from LAX, which is a major point of entry. So I want to talk about that for a minute, because it's something that we don't talk much about generally. The West Side is the end of the line, the literal end of the line. So for all of the regional transit that ends here on the West Side, Westchester and Playa del Rey are a pretty big recipient of that. There are also folks who arrive at LAX every single day. No job, no money, no plan, no one to pick them up, nowhere to go. We have entire teams who are dedicated to intercepting folks who are arriving in LAX. That may account for some of the numbers that we saw reflected in that data, but the reality is, whether or not that information or those numbers were true as of the night of the count a year ago in 2024, today, the circumstances on the ground are that we do have some encampments, including the one under Westchester Parkway. There's 6 people there. We are in the process currently of actively implementing another 4118 zone. We are in the process of securing our signage, but I moved that through City Council for you several weeks back before the year's end. We are also working with the mayor and her team to get an inside safe intervention at that location. And when it's done and when we get it cleared, we are going to roll out our new 4118 zone. Now, I am concerned that if we do it without those resources in place, I fear that those individuals will migrate to Westchester Park, which is the last thing we want after all the work that we've done to get the park under control. And it's not perfect. We have an occasional issue there. Occasional persistent vehicles. The awning outside the senior center is an attractive place because it provides cover for folks. So we work with our circle team and our providers, and we clear the park when there is someone who sets up. Remember, 4118 isn't a wall. It doesn't stop someone from coming in and lying down and going to sleep, and it doesn't stop them from putting a tent up. But what it does do is enable us to go and tell them that they can't be there. And when we do that, we always work with our service provider to offer resources. So I worry about displacement of folks at Westchester Parkway until we have the resources in place that we need. So just know that that is on the top of my list and our team's list, and we are going to continue working on it until we get that issue resolved. Also wanted to mention to you that the encampments at the Culver Loop and under the Culver Bridge were both cleared this week. Those have been long-standing issues and challenges, and in part have been hard for us to deal with in CD11 because that is Caltrans property. Last August was the first time I reached out to the governor in writing and identified locations in CD11 that were on state-owned property and asked for either the state's assistance in getting those places cleared or a right of entry so that we, City of Los Angeles, your CD11 team, could go in and take care of the problem ourselves. And so we have finally, just in the last couple of weeks, gotten that right of entry now for those locations. And so we will, going forward, be able to use our city resources and our teams to address those areas. So that takes us to the RVs. We have cleared Osage. We have generally cleared the area around Bristol Farms. I think there is right now one left near the KFC. Airport Boulevard and Otis College are the two areas that we are primarily focused on. We continue working with DOT to site when we can, but those vehicles are operational. And when we do our operations there, they have a tendency to just move and shuffle around. We have repeatedly asked the mayor and her team to do an RV inside safe with us. And when those resources become available, we will focus them on problem areas in Westchester. And as soon as we have our new service provider who focuses on RV interventions scaled up and we have the resources there, we will continue to use those in Westchester as well. Even in this difficult political climate in City Hall, where I don't generally have the support that I need on the City Council to advance much of this agenda, I am still continuing to push policies to address vehicular homelessness, including the motion that I introduced and was passed by council, calling to bar RV encampments around schools, parks, daycares, and sensitive sites, just like we do with our 4118 ordinance. Our CAO is in the process of identifying locations in each council district where vehicles can park with access to services so that we can implement a ban on RVs around around sensitive sites. We are still waiting for that ordinance to come back. And when the CAO has completed their work in those assessments, I will be the first one to bring that information to you. And it's something that I know we all very much want to see going forward. We also have my vanlord motion pending. And we've talked about this before. Many of the RVs that are being used as dwelling are being bought or purchased off of salvage yards and junk lots and then rented out to people. We have had occasions where we have actually impounded RVs, and it is actually cheaper for the RV owner to wait out the 30-day impound and avoid paying the impound fees by simply going and buying the stupid thing off the lot again. And that is in part because state law has a very, very low value threshold set for when an RV has to be sold instead of disposed of. So my team and I are working very closely with state lawmakers to adjust that dollar amount, which will help with some of that problem. The ordinance on the van lords, barring that here in the city of Los Angeles, has been pending with our city attorney for a long time. But as soon as that comes back, that is another tool that is going to help us make a difference. And I want to be very clear about this. Our city is not an RV park. We are not set up to support widespread vehicle dwelling, and no community anywhere should have to put up with the widespread impacts that these RV encampments are having. My team and I are going to continue focusing on this, and we are going to continue advancing the legislation that we need to address this problem. So I'm going to switch gears one more time and talk about public safety and crime, because of course that remains a top priority. Unfortunately, staffing levels at LAPD are lower than ever, but that is why I'm continuing to work with LAPD to ensure that we can supplement their existing resources as best we can to keep you all safe. So some of you may remember that just back in the old days in December, a month ago, at Westchester Park, I held a press conference with our police chief and our district attorney announcing substantial investment of our CD11 discretionary funds in overtime patrol funding, automated license plate readers that will be placed at points of ingress and egress around the district, and lighting and tree trimming that will help us with some of our public safety hotspots. We are working actively now with LAPD on the camera systems, and we look forward to have that up and running. Now, we've also heard concerns about recent burglaries in the community. This is disturbing enough to me that I have asked Captain Applegate from Pacific Division to be here with us tonight. We'll let him answer questions related to the steps that LAPD is currently taking and the resources that they are dedicating to this issue. But I want to let you know that this is something that is absolutely unacceptable. It is my priority and LAPD's priority that not only you be safe in your home, but that you feel safe in your community. In addition to the investments of our discretionary dollars that I've already made, we have a commitment from LAXPD and our park rangers to increase their presence and patrols at and around Westchester Park. We've also been working to sustain our efforts to clear out the Westchester parking lot. Another issue I just want to mention for folks down in Playa del Rey, I know that the bonfires at Dockweiler have been an ongoing problem for many years. Your CD11 team is really proud that it was able to work together with the lifeguards and county fire to create a task force, and we'll look forward to continuing those efforts to have a presence and serve as a deterrent. Finally, I want to talk about one last thing on my agenda, and then we'll open it up to questions. And what I might do is have Captain Applegate. Actually, you know what? Before I move on to the next thing on my agenda, which relates to density and development, since we're on the issue of public safety, Captain Applegate, since you're here, I wanted to ask you about the burglaries. Obviously, there has been an uptick. People are rightfully concerned about this. Can you tell us what is going on in Westchester? Why has it become a target? And what is LAPD doing to address it?
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. So real quick, just introduce a couple of the folks that I have here in the room with me. We've got Sergeant Lovick, who oversees our senior lead officers, Sergeant Cook, who oversees community relations, Detective Salazar, who works our burglary table, and then we have senior lead officers Castaneda and Ramirez here with us as well. So as everybody in Westchester knows, crew burglaries are not new. It's not a new topic, and we've talked about it several times in the past. That trend has kind of gone up and down over the last year. Through the fall, and then around the turn of the year, we saw a pretty significant decline in the number of crew-related burglaries throughout Pacific Division, but those historically have been mostly in the Westchester and then also in the Mar Vista areas. What we have seen, though, is a disturbing trend in the last few weeks of a significant increase, especially in the Westchester area, of these crew-related burglaries. Now, for everybody, in case you don't know, I'll give you the real quick answer on the crew burglaries. Crew burglaries are not your kind of random person walking down the street who sees your garage open and steals something out of your garage. This is organized, sophisticated groups of criminals who come in. They often do pre-surveillance, kind of identifying the target, and then they come in with a very specific method of wearing completely covered hands, hooded masks. They're very quick. Multiple suspects go into a backyard, oftentimes smash a sliding glass door, make entry. They take jewelry, cash, high-end purses and clothing, and then they leave. They are difficult to catch because they don't take things that are generally trackable. They don't take phones, electronics, things like that we can easily track. Because of the kind of anonymous clothing and generic clothing, and the gloves that they wear, there's oftentimes little evidence left behind. Historically, our crew burglary suspects have been mostly male and female Black suspects, kind of like gang-related type crews. For some reason, you probably heard about South American theft groups. For some reason, Pacific Division has largely not seen a lot of South American theft-related burglaries until just recently. We think that is part of this most recent spike, is some of it probably is some of these South American theft groups who have kind of come to Pacific area and then even Westchester as well. So that's a little bit of an overview of kind of the current problem that we're having right now. We certainly understand the concern and the fear that it puts in the community, and we're doing the things that we can to try to address this. As you stated, our deployment is challenged, but in response to this, we have put every discretionary resource that we have at Pacific Division focused on this issue in the area. So I have a gang unit here at Pacific Division. We have temporarily pulled them away from some of their normal duties and asked them, go to Westchester, the areas that have been targeted, and do your work, your focused efforts, and patrol there. We also have a couple of surveillance under plainclothes units. I have a vice unit. I have a narcotics unit. In addition, I have temporarily pulled them away from their normal duties and assignments so that they can also bring an additional resource to that area. One thing, obviously, you will see the gang unit because they're in uniform and black and white police cars. You will not see our vice units. You will not see some of these other resources that are out there. And that's part of the strategy that we're trying to use so that we can identify suspects who are involved in this activity without being alerted to the fact that law enforcement is watching them. One of the other things that I'll say is this is not a problem specific to Pacific or specific to Westchester. There's a couple of things about Westchester in particular that make it probably a more likely target. There is very good ingress and egress in and out of Westchester. It's freeway friendly. You go down Manchester, you're on the 405. You go down La Tijera, you're on the 405. You go up or down Sepulveda, you're on the 405 or the 105. You can get in and out of Westchester fairly easily. And that is obviously appealing to suspects who are looking for a place, to go commit their crimes. When I say that it's not unique to Pacific or Westchester, and this goes to kind of the investigative angle, these are investigations that are not just being handled by our detectives here, but these are investigations that are also these same suspects that are also targeting other LAPD divisions as far away as Hollywood or North Hollywood or all the way out in the valley, and then also neighboring cities, Beverly Hills, Culver City, some of our neighbors as well. And so our detectives are involved in collaborating, not just with LAPD, but with outside entities on these investigations, on any leads or clues that we can connect. There are ongoing investigations to specific leads on suspects. I can't go into details about that. Those are essentially investigations that are beyond the scope of Pacific Division, but they are in the works. I hope that, it's one of those things that an arrest may not directly affect our division. It may not directly affect us, but it certainly will have an indirect effect on taking these suspects that are responsible for crimes all over the area and taking them off the street. So that's a little bit of an overview of the problem and some of the things that we are trying to do in response. Ma'am, if you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer those for you.
No, Captain Applegate, I appreciate that. When I heard that there had been all of these burglaries and no arrests, I was obviously really concerned about that. But I am pleased to hear that there are ongoing investigative efforts and subjects and that is moving forward. I'm also really grateful that you are pulling resources so that we can have a larger presence in Westchester, because the geographic challenges being what they are with the ingress and egress, I am hopeful that our addition of the cameras will help with some of that. And I look forward to our continued work to get those online and up and running. But I just want to say thank you for your responsiveness to this and working with me and my team to make sure that we get ahead of this problem. It's appalling, and it is unacceptable for this kind of activity to go on in any community, but for a community to have been hit this hard again and again. I feel like we've seen this movie a few times now in the last couple of years, and you guys have always been great about flowing in the resources when we need it. And I just, again, very grateful for that continued partnership. And I really want our constituents and residents to know that we take these issues very seriously. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. I appreciate you staying on so that when we get to questions, if we have things that are specific for you, we can have you jump on as well. So I'm going to get back to the last item on my agenda, and then I will feel like I have said enough. You don't need to hear any more from me. Let's hear from the community. But I want to talk about density and development. There've been a lot of conversations about ED1 and community plan updates. And one of the narratives that, I hear or people screen grab and send me a lot of times in these WhatsApp groups or on Nextdoor is a narrative that somehow I, as your council member, or the CD11 office is pushing density in Westchester, or that we are targeting Westchester for density. And I just want to be very, very clear about this. We do need to address affordable housing, and we need to add housing, but it is not me who pushes these big, dense projects in any community. Over the last several years, state lawmakers have allowed for extra height and density. They are the ones who have implemented requirements like no parking for all affordable projects. I am very, very concerned, and I always have been, about adding density without concurrent investment in the infrastructure to support it. And boy, did we all see the results of that in the Pacific Palisades last month. I didn't write these laws in Sacramento that allow for this stuff, and I didn't vote for the people who did. I don't love this stuff, and I know a lot of you don't either. But this narrative that I am somehow pushing it or targeting a community for it is just simply not accurate. I do not control the private real estate market. I don't decide what lots or buildings are going up for sale. I don't decide who buys it. And I'm not the one that comes up with the plans that they submit to the city. Much of what gets proposed is now by right. It never even makes its way to the council office or to the city council for a vote. What I can do, and what I have tried to do, is help us implement the density that we know is coming because there is a push to do it, and now the law allows for it. But what I can do is help us implement it in a way that tries to protect the character of your community, especially your single-family neighborhoods. I love Westchester. It's like a little slice of Americana right here in the middle of Los Angeles, and I don't want it to change. I want it to be the Westchester that you know and that you love. And part of the reason that we held over 70 listening sessions with Westchester residents and groups and organizations to get your feedback was to try to thoughtfully keep added density out of your single family neighborhoods. But the trade-off for that is that the commercial corridors are where the density is going to have to go. And there are some communities that for any number of reasons are likely to be desirable to developers who want to build. And Westchester is one of them. So is Mar Vista. And so is Delray. Why? Because you have a lot of commercial thoroughfares and opportunities to do those projects. I don't pick it. It's not me that files those applications and builds the buildings. We work with developers to try to extract as many community benefits as we can. And we are doing everything in our power to protect the character of your community and especially your single family neighborhoods. But you know, I don't know what else to say about my own views on it other than that. But I also want you to know that our planning team is always here to answer questions and to work very closely with you as a community. You know Westchester better than any of us. And I want your voices to be the primary ones in deciding what the future of your community is. And while I don't have the ability to wave a magic wand and make all of these density laws go away, you do have my commitment to continue working with you as a community. And I will continue to make my team available to you. And as projects and issues and questions come up, we're here to be your advocate. We're here to move on good legislation that tries to protect the character and integrity of your community. ED1 is a good example of that. There's been a lot of chatter about it lately. That is a directive issued by the mayor, not the city council. And what it does essentially is streamline affordable housing, which in many cases is already mandated by state law, regardless of ED1. Those are projects that were likely to be filed and maybe built, whether ED1 existed or not. My team and I successfully advocated to exclude R1s from ED1. Projects using ED1, like any other development, are driven by market conditions, not by a government mandate. So for better or worse, there are private sector decisions that the city can't and doesn't control. And that's what really dictates what projects end up in what communities. State laws like SB 35 and the Housing Accountability Act have already taken local planning decision and discretion out of our hands in many ways, including even providing input on what's a qualifying project. And that is why it is a big concern for me. I don't love it. I would love to have a say in all of this. But I hear the frustration being directed at my office and our team members about it, which is why I'm taking the time to point out to you guys, I'm on your side. And if we want to effectively try to change the laws that are allowing for this, there are effective ways and places we should be channeling those efforts. I want to be able to add good, smart housing projects that it considers the needs of our existing communities and our residents, but we also have to take into account our infrastructure and the improvements that are going to be necessary to support the growth. For too long, we have added too much density in too many places without the support systems in place that we need to support it. So I just wanted to say that because I hear that narrative it being pushed in a lot of places, and I just want to make it abundantly clear it's just not the case. So we are here to work with you on that. We really appreciate all of you. And again, we appreciate your patience and your grace and your support over these last 6 weeks. We literally could not have survived this if it hadn't been for all of our communities in CD11 coming together. Now, we are looking forward to resuming our regular district operations and getting back to whatever our new normal as a district is going to be. Want to thank LAPD as always for being here when we do a community meeting and we need you for the extra assists. I know that you guys take these issues seriously, and I'm incredibly grateful for your partnership and everything that you do for us. And to Team CD11, as always, you guys are amazing. You make this this entire operation that we do as a council office work. And I couldn't do the work that I do if it weren't for you guys. So thank all of you for being here and hanging in with us tonight too. All right, Westchester, good night. We love you. We'll see you soon.